Hello, everyone. This is Eve Harrow, host of Rejuvenation on the Land of Israel Network. Today is August 19th, 2018, another beautiful summer day in the Land of Israel, the 9th day of Elul, 57, 78, working our way towards the end of the summer, and you can feel it here. I had an insanely, incredibly exciting week last week. Is that enough hyperbole? That I am not going to talk to you about today. It's going to have to wait for another week. I prefer not to do two monologues in a row. And last week you heard some of my trip to the Balkans. So I've got a great interview that I taped a couple of days ago with Lior Gottesman and Dr. Fragman-Sapir of Jerusalem's Botanical Garden. And so that's going to be the bulk of today's show. But I did just want to say hello and tell you what you're missing, what you're going to have to wait for another week. I went up to the Temple Mount. I went skydiving. It was really, really crazy week in addition to the other usual things that happened. But those are the two things that will stand out like in my life, not just for last week. Yes, I went skydiving. I jumped out of a plane at 12,000 feet. I'm still literally flying high from it. I'll still be flying high in a week, and I'll share more about the context of that in just a few days. But meantime, I want you to enjoy today's show, and I hope you all have a really great week. If you're in Israel, you're seeing what I'm seeing. You're seeing the height of the batzir, of the grape harvest all around the land now, depending on the altitude and the vintners and the winemakers. They are harvesting the grapes for this year's wine. And that's why this Wednesday I have a full bus for One Israel Fund, my annual wine trip, going to the area of the Shomron, going into the fields, into the vineyards with Dr. Shivi Drury, who's doing that great research on the ancient wines, and then going to Torah Winery and to the Binyamin, like there's a special Binyamin Winemakers Club. They just make a few bottles of wine a year, really, just a few hundred, and we're going to be tasting their wine, and Gvaot Winery, and just like a really great day. I'm hoping it should be a really great day, and just get into the land itself and get into the season of the wine like we used to in the olden days and like we so much enjoy today. So I'm looking forward to that this week, and I'll fill you in on that and on so many other things. Meantime, cutting away to the Botanical Gardens. Once again, thanking Ben and Tabitha and everybody associated with the station. Hope you guys are good. Love hearing from you. Love the feedback I got from last week's show. Suggestions of books to read and all that. Also, people have been writing to me asking about my schedule for my upcoming trip in October and in November. You can go onto my website, eveharrow.com, and see not everything, but pretty much 90% of the schedule is set. And if you are where I'm going to be, let's plan on meeting up. That would be just totally great. So write to me, eve@thelandofisrael.com. I hope everything is good with all of you. We're just rolling it day by day and just never a dull moment. So take care, everybody. Eve Harrow, Rejuvenation, the Land of Israel Network. Thank you guys so much always for tuning in and for listening. Enjoy the interview. Hi, everybody. Eve Harrow on Rejuvenation for the Land of Israel Network. It is the end of a beautiful August day here in Jerusalem, and I'm sitting in the Botanical Gardens in the heart of the city with Lior Gottesman and Dr. Fragman-Sapir, whom I was really very honored to meet a few weeks ago when I was here on a review course for tour guides. There's a lot of us, and this is right in the heart of Jerusalem, don't know the place. And I was actually just here yesterday with my grandchildren because they have a whole Playmobil exhibit, which was wonderful and fun. But I asked them to carve out some time from their very, very busy work days to talk to you guys about what the Botanical Gardens are, but more than that, what it is that they do in their professional life. So maybe we'll start with Ori.
Hi there. It's very difficult to say shortly what we are doing because we are doing so much. But we grow a lot of plants, over 6,000 species and varieties of plants from all over the world. All of them are growing here in Jerusalem, and many of them are very interesting plants. They could be fruit trees that are just ripening now in August. They could be medicinal plants. They could be just beautiful flowers. Water-saving plants for the new sustainable garden, or other plants. So it's kind of, I would say, a Disneyland for plants.
So what is your exact position here?
Okay, so my scientific specialty is sustainable gardening and bulb research. So I'm doing research on wild garlics, and we are doing all kinds of ecological research and research on endangered plants. But my job, my everyday job, is a managerial one, and we manage the collection of the garden. And just imagine, it's like managing a supermarket warehouse with a lot of items. You have to order new stuff, you have to get rid of old stuff, and you have to manage the whole thing. And that's a lot of work with the staff that is doing that. By the way, everything we are doing, we are not doing only by ourselves. We are doing with volunteers who are volunteering in the garden. So if you know anybody in central Israel that is interested in volunteering, the only exception is that you have to do at least 4 hours a week. That's it. Mm-hmm. So if somebody is interested, and volunteering in the garden is not only in gardening or weeding. It could be in the library, it could be in curation, it could be in labeling, it could be in the nursery, in the offices. So a lot of jobs are offered, and a lot of people enjoy it because it becomes something social beyond the botany.
And I know for myself, because I have a garden at home, I find it therapeutic to get in there, get dirt under my fingernails, and just watch something grow. There's nothing like it. So I'm originally from California, where there's a garlic festival every summer. So, is there anything new in garlic that hasn't already been figured out?
Oh, there's a lot new in garlics and in all the native flora of Israel. So we are doing research on the flora of Israel. It's all being documented in a big website which we manage that is called Flora of Israel online. So you can Google that. But specifically on garlic, there are almost 50 different wild garlic species in Israel. Most of them are not edible. Some of them are. But many of them are ornamental, so they are beautiful for gardens. And we have described at least, I think, 5 species in the last 6 years that were not known within Israel. So what we find again and again is that the flora of Israel references is not updated. And today with molecular research, we find a lot of new findings. So things that we thought, for example, were one group of plants we thought was one species, we found out that this is actually 3 species. Wow. So there is one, we are very patriotic about it. One garlic we named Allium Israeliticum. So the Latin name contains the name of Israel, which is unusual because Israel is only 70 years old, and most of the species were described 150 years ago. Mm-hmm. So Israel was not even in mind. So we have now a few of them.
Well, so, Israel, in addition to being part of a very chaotic Middle East, is also on the bird migration highway and really at the confluence of a lot of Africa, Europe, and Asia. So does that mean that you have certain things that grow here that don't grow anywhere else, or it's the most northern point for a certain plant and the most southern point for another plant, so they're growing together and they don't do that anywhere else because of our interesting geographic location on the globe?
It's yes for everything. It's very complex. So in general, if you look at Israel is half desert and half Mediterranean climate-wise. So it's either northern elements, European elements, or Mediterranean elements that are disappearing in the desert, or vice versa. But since Israel is a junction, climatic and continental junction, as you've said, there is a lot of things that come in here and mix and change here. So everything is peripheral. So all the, Mediterranean mints are very different here at the edge of the range from the center of the range. So some of them speciated into local exclusive plants. So we have, I think, 56 plants that are endemic to Israel, which means they grow nowhere else in the world. But what is very interesting that everything is peripheral. So all the populations, even of widespread plants, are very unique at the edge of the region. I'll give you an example. For example, a northern species will finish here in Israel. So if you want to cultivate it for California, I'm sure you're very interested in that, you have to take the arid-most populations. The arid-most populations are in Israel and not in Europe. So it's just an example.
Right. Because they have to get used to this climate and not where they're originally from. So you mentioned sustainable agriculture. So what does that mean? Because that's a term that many of us hear all the time. But what does it really mean?
I'll start with the water. Number 2 in the budget of the botanical garden is water after celery. So this has become a major issue in Israel because we don't have enough water, and the desalinized water that is now very popular in Israel is very expensive. So it's a big issue, financial issue, but also ecological issue in Israel, and we are trying to replace plants that need a lot of irrigation with plants that need less irrigation. It doesn't mean that we stopped irrigating the whole thing, but it means that at least we are trying to save water. So from this angle, we are doing a lot of work. So you can look at the garden as experimental land where we introduce a lot of plants and we check how well they can survive without irrigation or with little irrigation in the summer. You know, the big challenge is the long dry summer, not the cool wet winter. So we are trying to test a lot of plants, and we've already introduced some dozens of plants to the business, you know, ornamental business in Israel, and also to the forestry business, plants that do not or almost do not need any irrigation. But beyond that, when we talk about sustainable gardening, we talk about two things: water saving, but also work saving.
Mm-hmm.
So
not as work intensive.
Yeah, sorry for my bad English.
Labor intensive.
Exactly. So we are trying to get plants that will not need a lot of work. So, for example, we are very keen on ground cover plants that will cover an area with a dense green carpet that will look good throughout the year, and then we save a lot of work on weeding. Mm-hmm. So this is another example of sustainable gardening, and in general, one of the main rules in this context is to use a lot of the local flora, and this is where we specialize. We are trying to get local plants instead of exotic plants.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so moving on to Lior, who's we'll come back to Ori in a few minutes, the Hub co-founder and director. So what's a hub?
Wow. I think most people know about hubs as co-working spaces, or as things that are happening in the technological startup world. And actually what we did was look at that concept and adopted it to the environmental world and actually set up an environmental hub, or we're called Habitus, the JBG Hub for Urban Sustainability.
So what does that mean? Now we've gone from from agricultural sustainability. So what's urban sustainability?
Well, I think worldwide, botanical gardens are trying to rethink their social role and to think about their positions in cities. Over half of the world's population lives today in cities, and in Israel, 92% of the population lives in cities. And we're always used to thinking about nature and environment as something very romantic in the north of Israel, when actually we need to start thinking about what the environment looks like in the cities. Now, sustainability is a pretty wide term that's being used in various things, but I would say the first or broadest thing I can say about sustainability is taking care of today's generation without ruining it for the next generations. And that could be done in a lot of things. Now, when we talk about urban sustainability, we're talking about food security, we're talking about transportation, we're talking about waste, energy, all the different things that allow a city to be resilient and that allow well-being for the citizens. Now, the Botanical Gardens are a 30-acre, beautiful green lung with so much expertise and so much space that can offer many things to the city. And I think that moving forward to the 21st century, the gardens are definitely understanding that, yes, the scientific and botanical and sustainable gardening things are the core, but we can expand and do more things and do more reach out to the community. And I would say the hub, we're a department at the gardens. We're sort of an outreach department. When I came to the gardens to set up the hub 4.5 years ago, I sat with Ori, and he told me, listen, we do two main things. We do science and botany, but the other thing that we have to do, if we don't do it, the first thing is not going to be worth it, is educating and reaching out to people. And the gardens have a beautiful big education department which brings kids from all over Jerusalem, Arabs, Haredis, secular. But what we try to do at the hub is actually reach out and go out. So we do, I would say, three main things. One is programming. We have programs for kindergartens, schools, young adults, and pensioners, all of whom receive training, knowledge, workshops, and then they go out and they either volunteer in cities or in kindergartens. We set up sustainable gardens. We've already set up over 120 sustainable gardens all over Jerusalem. And we basically try and get people closer to nature, get kids to know that their carrot comes from the soil and not from the supermarket. And we do that. So that's our programming. Now, the biggest thing the hub does today is that we actually facilitate a network of 84 environmental change agents in Jerusalem. And people are usually shocked to hear that there are 84 organizations, startups, businesses, entrepreneurs who are doing various things. And the garden, which up until a couple of years ago wasn't as connected as it could have been to what they were doing, today is actually a home for them. And we're
a hub.
A hub, exactly. Okay. So I got there eventually to the answer to your question. Yeah, a hub. So we give them professional development, meetups, events. Half of what we do is just matchmaking. They ask us, can you please connect me to this person who's doing that? We connect them to professionals from the gardens. For instance, the Urban Food Forest group from Jerusalem, we connected them with Ori, which gave them the scientific knowledge that they needed for what they needed, but not only that. The third thing we do is actually work with the municipality to try and change some of the laws in Jerusalem or some of the limits. For instance, at the hub, we run an urban agriculture incubator where we take people who want to grow food in the city and we help them do that.
You're talking about like a window box in their apartment or something even more extensive than that?
No, so I'm talking about roof gardens to grow food. I don't know if you know this, but 30% of Jerusalem population suffers from food insecurity. And that's a crazy number. That's like, I mean, if you compare it to Tel Aviv where they have 4%, here the numbers are really high. So we're helping people grow their own food. But we understood that we can help these farmers create a business plan, find a roof, train them how to grow their food. But if the municipality is not going to change the pricing of water or the permits to do that, it's not going to work. So that's just one example, but we do try and do things bottom up and try to influence the top down.
Mm-hmm. How's that going for you?
Well, it's challenging. I mean, I'm sure most people, the municipality, were used to thinking about it as one thing, but it's actually an octopus with so many different hands. So sometimes we're surprised and people are very interested in this. And I think the environmental world or sustainability world has a bad stigma. How do you say stigma?
Yeah.
Stigma.
Stigma's English.
Yeah, of being tree-hugging hippies. And I love tree-hugging hippies. Yeah, I have nothing to do with them. But but that doesn't buy the people from the municipality. But when you start talking to them about the quality of air that Jerusalemites are breathing, or their food security, or how easy it is to get from one place to another through transportation, then they understand that it's a must-have and not just a nice-to-have thing. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people are like, well, what does that have to do with botanical gardens? Right. And that's exactly what we're saying. Botanical gardens in the 21st century are not only botany focused, but it's so much more. This place can actually, Anchor Institute can actually influence Jerusalem, can actually influence lives of hundreds of people. And we're trying humbly to do that.
Mm-hmm. Are you affiliated with any universities, or the Botanical Garden stands on its own?
The Botanical Garden was established by the Hebrew University in the 50s. But it developed into something very big and expensive, and the university realized at some point this is too expensive and too complex, and the university found partners. So today we are an NGO with 6 founding organizations. So we have a board with representatives from these organizations, and this is what we are today. So we are affiliated to the university in many ways. We sit on university land. There is botanical and ecological research project being done in the university. I, for example, teach in the university, although I'm not employed there. So there are big connections, but we are not part of the university as an institute.
But if you make some big discovery here, would the university have first dibs on that, or it doesn't work like that?
No, it doesn't work like that. In the university, there is a unit called the National Herbarium of Israel. The herbarium is a collection of dried plants that were collected over 100 years in the land of Israel and its environment. So if, for example, I find a new wild garlic and I describe it as a new species, I deposit the herbarium sheets in the university, obviously, so that they keep it for generations.
I'm particularly interested in the medicinal side of it. My husband is a physician, and just I think anybody who has a little bit of knowledge knows that we're reaching the limits of antibiotics and a lot of the superbugs that have come out there that we're overusing. And we're heading, perhaps, and now we're having some kind of outbreak in Israel of some strange kind of thing in the north, some bacteria that's being found from the urine of animals. It's being found in some of our streams and our rivers and causing people to get sick, and they're working on that. So are you doing that kind of research specifically or it's not on that kind of a level?
It's not my personal speciality, but here in the garden we have a lot of activities. So we have courses on medicinal plants, for example. So Dr. Mina Farhan, who is a big, a big specialist on this field, is doing her courses here. And there is an annual meeting of the medicinal plant organization. I think that's how they are called. They come here, like 200-300 people, and have their workshop and have their meeting over here. So we are all the time dealing with these kind of things. And this topic is always on our agenda because we talk about, preserving the biodiversity. And it's a very, kind of a sexy word, biodiversity, and everybody talking. But why should we save biodiversity? Especially when we talk about endangered plants, for example. So I show my wife a plant that is the size of my finger, and it has these little tiny green flowers. And she said, "Are you kidding? Are you wasting the money you don't have on saving this plant? This is ridiculous." And I told her, do you know which will be the next plant that will provide the new medicine for cancer? Right. Or which new plant have any other beneficial role? Or do you know what's the role of this plant in its ecological ecosystem? Maybe it's an important role. And if we lose it, the whole ecosystem or part of it will collapse. So this is why we are dealing a lot with conservation in general, with focus on medicinal plants or other things that are important for the human race. Yeah.
Endangered as well.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that?
Yeah, the Endangered Plant Project is being done here since the 90s, late 90s. So we are now in our collection we have 295 endangered plants of Israel, which is 70% of all the endangered plants of Israel. Wow. So on one side we are a museum. We show these plants, we educate, and in the garden there are dozens of thousands of people coming every year, even more than that. Half of them are children. So we educate and we show these plants, but we are doing also a conservation per se. So we are propagating these plants. We are producing a lot of seeds, a lot of new plants, and we need partners, or we need actually clients that will take these plants from us and help us, finish the conservation process. So in this, there are many units that can do that. For example, the Israel Gene Bank that sits in Volcani Center near Rehovot, we are working in collaboration. So we get from them seeds, we grow plants and give them back seeds and so on. Another good example is the Gazelle Valley, which is neighboring the garden. This is, I would say, a semi-natural situation in Jerusalem. So a lot of plants disappeared completely from Jerusalem. They might be common outside Jerusalem, but inside Jerusalem they used to be common, and now they are gone. So we are replanting, we are establishing these plants in semi-natural situations. And in this sense, connecting to what Lior was talking about, she was talking about city nature or city conservation or whatever. I think most of Israel is disturbed. Israel is...
That's for sure.
Yeah. Not the people. The land is disturbed. So it's a kind of a Hong Kong, a small piece of land with too many people. But inside the cities and settlements and villages, we have a lot of disturbed land. And we can really make it wild again, and we can really make it flower again. And that's what we are trying to do within the boundaries of Jerusalem, and the hub is doing a lot of work, and we're doing a lot of work. We're working a lot with the Nature and Park Authority, with nature reserves. So we're doing a lot of conservation, which is very, very important.
Do you have connections on the international scene as well, or it's really just specifically Jerusalem and Israel based?
Conservation-wise, we have connections with dozens of gardens and organizations all over the world. Botanically, we have connections with over 600 gardens all over the world, which is, wow, it's a big issue. So we have a lot of knowledge that comes from long distances.
I remember, Lior, you telling us you had a very interesting journey to get here. Maybe tell my listeners a little bit about how you ended up here in the Botanical Gardens in Jerusalem.
I was born in Israel, but in the north in an agricultural village in Kfar Chaim.
Okay.
When I was in the 4th and 5th grade, we actually moved to California. My parents are medical doctors, so they did their internship over there. Then I came back. I actually spent 2 years in England. That's where I did my master's in environmental economics, which was very interesting and eyes-opening.
And you're going to have to tell us what that is, environmental economics.
Well, I would say it's ethical economics, both for people and for the environment, which is not exploitive. That's funny. And it's a place where the economics is serving the humans and not humans serving economics like we see so much today.
Okay, so can you give us an example? How does that fit into your work in the hub?
Well, it fits in many places. I can give one example for environmental economics is how we measure things. So if you're a regular economist, what you do is you measure the financial situation of Israel, if it's good or bad, with the GDP, Tamag in Israel. But that just says that anything that comes into the economy and puts in money just makes it better. So for instance, if people are getting divorced, then they're paying their lawyer, and that gets GDP up.
Oh, I never thought of it that way, that the GDP goes up because people are getting divorced and paying their lawyer. Okay.
Exactly.
So the divorce rate helps the GDP. What a terrible thing. Okay.
Yeah, also if there are accidents and people go to the hospitals and there are ambulances, that gets the GDP up. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the ways we measure economics really reflects on our happiness or our health. So one thing that environmental economics tries to do is actually have alternatives way to measure things. Environmental economics has a lot to do with using the resources we have. So if we're talking about shared economy, local economy, that's a lot of what we do at the hub. We're actually trying to depend and rely on what our community has to offer one another and not only search for things outside. And then you see that it's abundant, the amount of things that people can offer to one another that doesn't just go down to the shekel.
Right. Well, that's the way they used to do it in the olden days, right? When people bartered, you grew this, he grew that, and then everybody figured it out. And to some ways, maybe some degree, I think we should be going back to that a little more, and it builds community.
Yeah, I think a lot of the ideas behind sustainability or environmental economics goes back. But I do think that it goes back and forward at the same time because we're not asking people to go and live in caves or, a lot of my friends are like, oh, all you environmentalists, you're all vegan and you're all telling us just to shop local and not buy plastic. And
use electricity, start rubbing two sticks together.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the reasons that this field doesn't have the best PR in the world. But there are ways to go back and go forward at the same time if we use technology in a smart way, if we connect to our communities, which can actually suit where we're at today in 2018.
Mm-hmm. And Jerusalem has to be such a challenging environment to do all this because we speak of community, but in Jerusalem there's probably hundreds, if not thousands of different communities, some of whom really don't have very much to do with each other at all.
Well, I think that just like we're talking about biodiversity with plants, it's important that we talk about biodiversity with humans. I used to live in Tel Aviv, and I love Tel Aviv, but it all felt just a little bit too much of the same. And in Jerusalem, I feel that the diversity, if we look at it as the solution and not as the problem, that can really lead us to the most beautiful, inspiring and innovative ideas where where all these different populations meet.
Do you have programs like that? Like, do you just have, let's say, Arab kids coming in with their Arab teacher, or different schools, the secular school, the Haredi, the ultra-Orthodox school systems coming in on their own? And that's a great beginning, just to expose them to a world that they probably are not familiar with. Or is there some kind of integration that goes on here in the Botanical Gardens as well?
So first of all, as far as the education department goes, there are kids coming from all over, and they, instead of doing or talking about coexistence, they just coexist. They just come here together. Same with the hub network. What we do, our programming or our network. In our network, there people can sit. I mean, one of them could be Arab from East Jerusalem, another one can be an ultra-Orthodox, and they just discuss sustainability, or they discuss what they want to do with the waste in Jerusalem, and then it just happens. And each person has such a different worldview that it just enriches the conversation.
Yes, there's a lot of commonalities too. A lot of the same problems in different sectors.
On top of that, we have an agriculture farm in the garden, which is a proper school with a headmaster and 8 teachers, and they have kids from all over Jerusalem, Arab kids, Jewish kids, secular kids, religious kids, all over, mentally disabled kids. So all kinds of kids are coming to the garden. I think about 1,500 kids per week. So that's a lot of kids that come from all over, and they just imagine a poor neighborhood in Jerusalem where they have mostly concrete or sometimes rubbish. And these kids come to the garden and suddenly are exposed to greens. And as Lior says, carrots can grow in the ground and not only being offered, in plastic bags. So they grow all kinds of things in the garden. And they grow vegetables, they grow flowers. And at the end of their semester, they can bring home something. It could be, a white cheese with a little bit of leek inside that they grew, or it could be a little pot with a small flower for the mom. So that's, I think, an important unit in the garden.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, one of the more successful campaigns I think they ran here in Israel a few decades ago was not to pick the wildflowers. All right, with all the very lively behavior of Israeli children, to say the least, that was actually something I think that was fairly successful. And you can go out to these places in the spring, etc., and there's carpets of flowers, and they're not being picked. So education can work, and if it starts with the kids, and then they bring it home, and they're able to say, we want to do this here in our neighborhood as well. What would you say is your biggest challenge right now, aside from financial challenges, which are always how to keep these programs going, I would imagine? But aside from that, and people can get involved, of course, if they want to. You can be in touch with me. I'll get you in touch with these guys. What would you say your biggest challenge is, aside from the water, and which we already spoke about, and the finances?
Well, I would say from the hub perspective, we're trying to influence Jerusalem. We're trying, with our community of change agents, with the backing of the Botanical Gardens, to influence Jerusalem. And our biggest challenge is to convince people why this topic has to do with every little piece of their lives. Telling them why environment and sustainability are as important as the political situation. I would say that's a challenge, but we need to learn to PR
better.
Yeah.
Right. So, there's elections coming up in Jerusalem in a few weeks. Have you had some of the candidates come here because, make it part of their platform and say it's integrate in? Everybody wants to, I would hope, have some kind of environmental piece into their platform, or they should. It's a crowded city. We've got the light rail. We've got lots of cars. We have a lot of traffic and all that. So is that something in terms of PR that you're bringing? And then whoever wins is going to already know about you, kind of spread it out there without going for one candidate or another, just get them all here at some point?
Yeah, so I know most of the candidates have already been here, and they have met with Tom Amit, he's the CEO of the garden, to come in here and listen, and it's actually been pretty positive. And other than that, in Jerusalem, we have come together, a group of dozens of environmental organizations led by Ayana and the Jerusalem Green Fund, and we're a big part of that, to write an amana. How do you say amana?
Manifesto.
Yeah, a manifest for a sustainable Jerusalem. And we meet with each one of the candidates to tell them about that manifest and to ask them what they think about hot, burning issues in Jerusalem. And it's been very interesting. A lot of them we're surprised to hear that some of the things we were talking about have to do with sustainability, because people think that sustainability is only green stuff. And then when they understand it's other things as well, because as I said, it's keeping what we need without hurting the next generations. It can be about gender equality, and it can be about ending poverty. And they're like, oh, so we're doing sustainability and we didn't even know about it.
So how does gender equality fit in with sustainability?
Wow.
Because that's like the topic, or one of the big topics now.
Yes, of course. If we're talking about a just world, if we're talking about a world where we can supply the demands of the current generations, then we definitely have to start thinking about how women are being treated, and what are their opportunities to fit in the city, to fit in society, what are the opportunities for our girls, and that, of course, comes into a sustainable lifestyle.
Right. Then you're dealing here, that's really is going to be a project, because you have a very conservative small c group here in Israel, both in the Arab sector and in the more Orthodox sector. That's not so quick to have the women go and haven't been, let's say, in a workplace with all kinds of different people.
That's right.
So that must be a real challenge.
Yeah, that's right. But you'll be surprised. There are new winds coming, even from the ultra-Orthodox or Arab communities. They're not as closed as we tend to think. But it's a process.
And I think once people realize, though, A, that it's not threatening, okay, that they could still be whatever tradition it is that's important to them, but make their lives better for themselves, for their children, then that's probably the way to go.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So you were telling us about a project that you have going here. You're going to be building something in the next few years. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so basically I started with people thinking that hubs are co-working spaces. When we set up the hub, we didn't just set it up. We went out and we interviewed our community. We interviewed dozens of people and asked them what they were doing, what they needed, and based on their questions, we built what the hub is today. So a lot of them were saying that not a lot of people know who's doing what, and that there needs to be some sort of an organizing mechanism, and that's exactly what we did. Some were talking about professional development, and that's what we did. They weren't talking so much about a designated space for their activity, but now, 3.5 years into that, people are starting to say, okay, we'd love to have some co-working spaces, an office, but if at WeWork or at a traditional co-working space, you usually have a table where you can sit down with your laptop. Our community, some of them need spaces for R&D, for research and development. Some of them need a greenhouse or a therapeutic kitchen or things you wouldn't imagine. So there's a green architect, his name is Noam Osterlitz, and he planned the whole designated hub area with reused containers, with solar energy, recycling water systems, and it's going to be very fine and very beautiful, so that people don't think that sustainability is like a dirty, muddy thing, but that it could actually be a nice surrounding to work at. And we're actually working to fundraise for that now, and hopefully in the next year we're going to start building that, and it's supposed to take about a year to do all that, and that's going to be another attraction for the garden, is again the gardens being a place that demonstrates sustainability, because imagine dozens of change agents working, some of them bringing their bees here, some of them setting up an urban food forest, someone putting their water collection systems, some are going to put their solar panels here, and all of them are going to demonstrate all that together. It's just going to be another plot of the Botanical Gardens, taking us forward to what we want to be.
Is Israel considered a leader in the areas that the two of you are talking about here, or are we lagging behind other places?
It depends. We talk about so many things.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so like what Lior was talking about now in terms of urban sustainability, is that something that we can help, that people will be coming in here, you'll be running conferences and teaching people from Germany and Canada and whatever, or are we going out to learn more at this point?
I think it's all happening, both things. But I think maybe people from Europe, let's say, it's not that relevant for them because it's a whole different climate.
Right.
But definitely for semi-arid and arid zones in the world, I think we can teach, and we should develop in the future some workshops.
Right. Well, I know Israelis have been, let's say, in Africa for decades and helping people, even countries we don't have relations with. Let's just get it done. Let's feed the people, and not necessarily get credit for it, but just do it. And so I would imagine that you fit into there as well, some of the things that you're doing.
Yeah, and if we're talking about sustainable living in cities, then probably in Europe it's more advanced than what's happening here in Israel. But an environmental hub at Botanical Gardens is something that's new to the world, which is nice. I'm being invited to talk all over the world about this model, about how Botanical Gardens can have a hub that's relevant to the city. We've been getting invitations from Chicago Botanical Gardens. Recently we got an invitation from Kew Botanical Gardens in London to just come and learn about the model. We have the Botanical Gardens in Tel Aviv and in Haifa, which are learning the hubs model, and hopefully when we speak in 10 years, the whole world will have environmental hubs.
Right.
I think Lior is very modest. I think the network of the hub that was compared to a mushroom network.
Of course, you have to have some kind of right.
Yeah, it's very innovative and very new, and the thing that it doesn't necessarily need to have one head and one head that managing all, but just a network of a lot of things. This is very innovative, very new, and I've been in the business of botanical garden for the last, let's say, 20 years, and I've never seen anything like that in any other garden or anywhere else, actually.
It's like an orchestra, as beautiful as one musician is, having them all together is something really outstanding. Okay, well, Ori and Lior, thank you so much. Anything else you want to add before we close it down? Just about people coming.
Yeah, we just want to invite whoever is listening to come and visit us, whether it's just to come and tour the gardens, whether it's to come and meet us, to take part of the courses, to be a part of the Hub Network, to be a supporter, whatever. We're very open to expanding the Jerusalem Botanic Gardens Hub and Gardens family.
Do you have a newsletter or something that you put out and keep people abreast of the things that you're doing?
Yeah, our website, botanic.co.il, has all our activities. And we have also another website with the whole garden collection, so you can actually browse in the garden and look for any plant you want and see where it grows. But I join Lior in inviting all of you to visit us. And you know, the garden is the actual gardens, but it's also the knowledge and the database and above it. So just visit, Flora of Israel online, Botanic COIL. Join our tours. We are having tours in Israel every month with actually the friends of our garden, Israeli friends of our garden, are organizing a botanical tour every month to all over Israel. We have tours abroad, which usually I'm guiding in the Caucasus, in Greece, in Turkey even. So join our tours.
What do you do on those tours? They're botanic tours? The emphasis is on the plant life in those places?
Yeah, exactly. The emphasis is mainly in nature, sometimes in gardens, but it's a normal tour. I mean, we were touring a new area and we enjoy the culture and the history, but the focus is on flowers. So if we go to Armenia, for example, in the Caucasus, we enjoy endless carpets of, lilies or anemones, different species, amazing botanical landscapes. So it also gives a perspective on Israel, because Israel is so tiny, and suddenly you go abroad and you see something a bit different.
Right. Oh, well, that sounds incredible. So for those of you who think you've done everything, here you go. There's probably something that you haven't done. And for those of you who've been to Jerusalem multiple times, and I know that some of you have you been to the Botanical Gardens? Because the next time, it's time to come. And, of course, for those of you who live in Israel, you have absolutely no excuse whatsoever. Okay? So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Lior. Thank you, Ori, for a very enlightening talk. Eve Harrow, Rejuvenation for the Land of Israel Network. Take care, everybody. Goodbye for now.
Throughout history, says His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie, it has been the inaction of those who could have acted, the indifference of those who should have known better, the silence of the voice of justice when it mattered most, that has made it possible for evil to triumph. Well, I'm definitely looking to defeat evil and bring the light of good into the world, because I'm Rav Mike Foyer, and this is the Jewish Story.
Join Rav Mike Foyer for the best Jewish history podcast, The Jewish Story, on the